Brilliant. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Tim Rocker. I'm Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Member for Young People, Learning and Culture, and I'm Fiona Bruce for tonight. I'm chairing tonight's question and answer session. I'm delighted to welcome you to our Westminster Together event. We're really pleased to be here this evening at the Westbourne Park Baptist Church. With us are my Cabinet colleagues, the Leader of the Council, Councillor Adam Hugg, and the rest of the Cabinet. And what I'm going to start to do is ask them to introduce themselves first before I hand over to the leader. So, after you, Lisa.
My name's Lisa Begum and I'm Cabinet Member for Housing Services.
My name is Matt Noble. I'm Cabinet Member for Climate Action, Regeneration and Renters.
Jeff Barraclough, Planning Economic Development.
I'm Councillor Adam Hugg. I'm Leader of the Council.
I'm Councillor Aisha Les and I'm one of two Deputy Leaders and Cabinet Member for Public Protection and Communities.
I'm Nafsika and I'm Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and the Voluntary Sector.
Hello, I'm Paul de Moldenberg and I'm the Cabinet Member for City Management and Air Quality, and that's waste, recycling, parking, roads, flooding, trees and transport and a bit else.
I'm David Boothroyd. I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance and Council Reform, and that's the money.
Brilliant. Thanks. So before I hand over to Adam, who's going to give a short introduction, I just want to run through the standard sort of housekeeping matters to make sure the evening runs as smoothly as possible. So it's a hybrid meeting this evening. We have an audience here with us, but we also have an audience joining us online and watching a live stream. A number of you have really kindly submitted questions ahead of the meeting, and I'm going to alternate between those who've submitted questions in advance, people who've submitted questions online, and of course take questions from the floor as they occur to people tonight. If you submitted a question and we don't have time to answer it, a written response will be shared with you. And if you've come tonight with a question, but there isn't an opportunity to answer it, then we will share an email address at the end of the meeting, and you're welcome to share it with us so that we can get a response to you. Our aim is to answer as many questions as we possibly can tonight. There are roving microphones that will appear in the hall, so if you are asked to give a question, one of our team will make their way to you. And if you can wait till it reaches you before asking your question, and then just clearly state your name and then ask your question. As I say, we want to get through as many questions as possible, so try and keep it brief if you can, so that we get through as many as possible. And we want to keep questions to council services and things the council is responsible for. I'd love to speak about Dua Lipa's new single, Houdini, that was released on 3rd November, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to discuss council services, so try and keep it to those tonight. We're not expecting a fire alarm, but if it does go off, then the fire exit is there on my left, your right, and it's up now onto the street. So, without further ado, I will hand over to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Adam Hugg, to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to join us tonight, both here and online. As we enter the final few weeks of the year, I think it's a good opportunity to try and touch base with many of you to set out what we've been able to achieve so far this year and what we're going to still need to do in 2024 and beyond. And this is an opportunity to listen to your concerns and see what more can be done to assist you here in Westminster. I'd like to quickly set out some of the work we've been doing over the past year. We've been tackling, and we know so many people in our city have been struggling with the cost of living crisis, and we've been doing what we can as a council to help. In September, we expanded our free school meal offering so that all 11 to 14-year-old residents in our secondary schools, as well as those from 3 up in our nurseries, were able to access free school meals. In addition to the primary school children that were made able to get free school meals from January. That additional support is thanks to some extra support from the Mayor of London. We know this has been able to help people save between £500 and £570 per child per year, which is helping people at this very difficult time, as well as making school a more inclusive and exciting place where people can get the nourishment they need to help with their lessons. We've also relaunched the Winter in the City campaign, our Warm Spaces Plus scheme that basically provides activities and opportunities for people to stay warm, safe and secure and supported in our community buildings, from libraries through to other public buildings, and some exciting ones like Somerset House and others added into the mix. We've added an additional £100,000 to help deliver some free activities and increase the availability of food at those events. But that's part of a broader £19 million package of living support, everything from the free school meals I've talked about to the rent support fund, as well as significant direct payments to people and support for things like food banks over the last year, as we know we're going to be facing another tough winter. One of the issues that I know comes up a lot at the moment is the issue of dockless e-bikes, which remain a real issue across London, and I share your frustration about the impact that they've had. The council has been working really hard in the absence of proper regulation from central government that would help us control the system, but we've been trying very hard to negotiate with the operators to get a better system in the meantime until government acts. And we've now got 300 dockless bays across the city, and we're currently working on addressing the kinks in the system as it's just been rolled out into the outer lying bits of the borough in the last few weeks. But we are lobbying hard for the government to actually give us give us and TfL the powers to make sure the system operates much more effectively. Similarly, we're pleased that pedicabs issue that affects the West End in particular, that there's a bill going through Parliament now, but we'll wait to see whether that actually gets given the time it needs to pass. We are currently consulting with our residents and other key stakeholders about the Westminster After Dark plan, which is an attempt to create an inclusive evening and nighttime plan, looking strategically across Westminster about how we balance the hospitality and nightlife that makes Westminster a vibrant place to live, with the need to ensure the safety and security of both residents and visitors, and address the noise, waste and other impacts that the nighttime economy has on residents. Those are just some of the top line things we've been working on since we last held Westminster Together, but there's a lot of things going on at a local level to help support people where they live in Westminster. As you may have seen over the summer, the first phase of our High Streets programme has been rolling out across the streets around here, so Paddington and Bayswater. That's a £10 million first step to help improve local high streets that are at the heart of our communities. And we're engaging to get community feedback and co-create proposals for the high streets to best serve local people. And some of the results from the first round of engagement will be made public very, very soon. Similarly, also near here, the North Paddington programme is moving forward with a range of different actions to support people in some of our most deprived parts of the city. We've completed the reorganisation of the council's neighbourhood teams, meaning that every ward will have 2 city inspectors as part of a wider group of officers, including coordinators and others, who are helping during the week, 7 till 7, and then an additional 24-hour and weekend response service that will be picking up issues as they happen, which is more city inspectors overall than there were before, and a new dedicated noise team that's now focused on problem solving. We know, as just from talking to people when we came in upstairs, we know housing remains a really big issue here in Westminster, and we're working hard to address some of the long-standing challenges we have in the housing service, as we're not yet where we need or want to be with this. We're working to refocus our complaints procedure to ensure that residents are at the heart of the process, and are finalising our new housing management compensation policies so that we're being more transparent with residents about how our compensation is calculated and offered when things go wrong. And we know there's all sorts of issues that happen across the city, from antisocial behaviour to issues with planning to licensing issues that our teams are working hard to address, but we don't always get to where we need to. But what we're trying to do is, as we go forward, try and make Westminster a fairer and better place to live, focusing on our community economy, improving our housing, improving our environment, and making our council more accessible to you all. Long way to go, but it's really good to be here with you tonight, and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant, thank you, Adam. So the first question is from Heidi Hellman. Is Heidi here? No. In that case, I'll read Heidi's question out on her behalf. In any case, it's to Councillor Noble, and the topic is on housing and net zero. And the question is, I would like to understand what the council is doing to help homeowners and landlords make their buildings net zero ready, e.g. streamlining the planning approval process for energy efficiency improvements, providing advice on decarbonising heating. Will my home eventually be part of a heat network, coordinating community solar schemes, etc.?
Thanks, Tim, and thanks, Heidi, for the question. So, with respect to the planning issues, we know it can be quite complicated to navigate sometimes, and obviously with so much of Westminster being in conservation areas, it can make it a bit more tricky. But we've published several how-to guides on the council's website, and they're basically trying to explain in as simple terms as possible how we can provide advice to people, and how they can get help with respect to the measures to do some of the kind of common retrofit things that people would like to do. An example is putting double glazing in your home. We're also, at the moment, we've been partnering with an outside consultancy to develop what's called a local area energy plan for Westminster. And so that covers the whole of the city. And when it's done, it will give us an evidence base for strengthening and changing the planning policies around energy efficient new builds, retrofits, but it also helps us to identify the parts of the city where different approaches to heating will be appropriate. So that could be, I'm not sure where Heidi lives, but that could be a heat network. It could be areas where heat pumps are more suitable. And will include things like double glazing upgrades and solar cells on roofs, etc. And it'll help us work out where to prioritise or pilot some of those schemes. And we're also part of the government's advanced zoning programme, and that's there to identify potential new low carbon heating networks. And some of those might be eligible for government funding as well, so we can support those projects. With respect to what people can do, we've early on in our administration last year, we launched an EcoFit show home, which was where we'd done all the retrofit to a property, and then we enable people, landlords, residents, whoever wanted to come and see it, to come and have a look at the measures that are possible in people's homes. And although the home has now been put to use by moving somebody into it, all the information, the learnings from that are still available on the council's website. So I would encourage Heidi to look that up.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Next question is from Olu Femi. Is Olu here in the room? No? Well, I'll ask Olu's question in any case, and then I might come to the floor for a question. So, why is, and this is to Councillor Begum, why is Westminster's leasehold issued on a coterminous basis as opposed to other councils where it is for 125 years? I'm a right to buy leaseholder who exercised his right to buy 7 years ago, but was told I could only get 91 years because someone in the estate had activated the lease.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you for your question, Olu. So generally, leases were on a coterminous basis until 2020, when we changed to the system where, as you say, you'll get a lease for 125 years. Unfortunately, it seems you bought your property before the start of 2020, and therefore your lease will be coterminous. However, you and all of our leaseholders have the right to extend your lease for another 90 years if you'd like. And we're waiting to see if central government will increase the statutory lease extension from 90 years to 900 years, as a lot of people are talking about it, and it's really important, but we will have to wait and see for that. Thank you for your question. And if you would like to speak to a member of our housing service to extend your lease, I was going to say we have officers here, but I guess Olu's not here.
Yes, but we can let Olu know.
We
how
can
to
let
get in
Olu
touch.
know, yeah.
Great. Now we've got a question from Abby Duramsey. Is Abby here? There you go. Do you want to ask your question, sir, or shall I read it on your behalf? Yeah, of course. So your question, sir, was again to Councillor Begum. and it was, what steps is the council taking regarding illegal HMOs and subletting of council properties by registered tenants?
Thank you for your question, Abby. So we know that illegal subletting and HMOs is an ongoing problem, and our local housing teams work jointly with the council's dedicated anti-fraud team to detect and tackle illegal subletting in tenanted properties. We have a regular estate inspections and regular home visits for our housing officers. We also use data analysis and follow up any reports through our hotline or reports made through our report service on the website. Our housing teams take it very seriously, and we investigate and address tenancy fraud to recover properties and prosecute those responsible. Over the past 3 years, we have recovered over 60 unlawfully occupied properties, and we're currently investigating over 40 cases. Thank you.
Great. So the next question is Ambia Zola here. Yes, would you like to ask your question, or shall I read it on your behalf? Shall I read? Yes, of course. So your question was to Councillor Butler-Thalasis, and the question is, which service in the borough acts as advocate for residents aside from councillors?
Hi. In Westminster, we have many voluntary sector organisations that advocate for residents, and I suppose to some extent they specialise in different areas. So, for example, we have the Citizens Advice Bureau and we have the Paddington Law Centre, which are two good places to get advice. And then you have more specialist organisations. So you have someone like Carers Network for carers. You also have Age UK for older people. And then you have a wider range of organisations. Some of them are specific to an area, like Paddington Development Trust, or you have organisations that deal with different groups. So, for example, somewhere like MUSO, Middle Eastern Women and Society, or Mosaic Community Trust. So I would say that all our voluntary sector organisations, one of the main things they do is advocate on behalf of councillors, and many of them will be able to help residents with how to get advice, and some of them officially offer advice.
Brilliant.
I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Great. So I've got an online question that's been submitted from Myra Grunberg to Councillor Barraclough, and it's, what rights do leaseholders have when planning permission has been granted without advising neighbouring residents about the construction which affects their rights to light and an intrusion of privacy?
Hi everybody, and hi Myra. That's quite a complicated question, and without knowing the particular circumstances of that development, difficult to answer. So if you could drop me a line, I'd be very happy to answer that. The specific question about rights to light as a form of words is a private matter between the leaseholders and whoever is doing the development. So that's something we need to take legal advice on. That's outside the planning process, so that particular term, right to light. But yeah, if you drop me a line, I'll be able to give you a fuller answer and let me know more about the details of the case.
Thanks, Jeff. So Loy Phillips in the room has got a question to Councillor de Moldenberg, and the question is, what's being done to mitigate any effects of flash flooding?
Thanks very much. As many people will know, there was terrible flooding in many parts of Westminster in July 2021, particularly up in Sherland Road, Kilburn Park Road, but also in around Formosa Street and other parts of Westminster. That was a terrible incident, and people are still living with the consequences of that today. We've been putting pressure on Thames Water to deal with everybody who was affected by that and to offer to install new return valves so that it doesn't happen again. Thames Water have done some but haven't done others, and we're pressing Thames Water to do that. In terms of what we're doing as a council, we've installed a lot of sensors to many of our gullies so that we know where the levels of silt are and if they're getting too high, we know where to clean and where to flush those gullies. So we're doing that as much as we can. During this season, when there's lots of leaves, we're giving priority to those areas that did flood so that we don't have the situation where leaves are blocking the drains, so that if it does rain, there's more problems caused. So we're giving priority to those flood risk areas. And finally, so many of you might have heard of the phrase sustainable urban drainage. It's known as SUDS for short. And that's basically to slow down the rain when it comes down, so that the ground and the sewers are more able to accommodate the surplus water when it comes down in torrents. And so we are hoping to introduce more areas where they're also called rain gardens, which hold the water when it comes down in excess, helps to regulate it and make sure that there isn't flooding like we had in 2021. We've put a budget of £2 million into this, and we're also working with Transport for London, who are also doing the same on their red route roads.
Thanks, Paul. Can I turn to some questions in the room? That hand was up super fast, this gentleman here.
My name is Achim.
Just wait for the microphone, sir, just a moment.
Achim, Church Street area. My question concerns decarbonisation as well. We were told just a couple of days ago that the district heating system that was planned for the major regeneration area, Church Street, had been shelved. First, can you confirm if that is correct? And second, why would you be doing that if you know that 86% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from existing building stock? So you would have to seek a mechanism by which you can connect existing buildings at scale.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Akim. So the district heating network for Church Street, I think, was mooted quite a long time ago and was shelved. It wasn't shelved recently, it was shelved a while back. I don't really want to kind of preempt the findings of the local area energy plan. It may be that there are ways to connect Church Street into a district heating network. It may be that when we look at some of the buildings that will be going up as part of the regeneration, it's more suitable to have things like air source heat pumps, like the same that we've done at 300 Harrow Road, and the same in Ashbridge Street, the development there in Church Street too, and it's the same in Ebury Estate as well. So it's possible to have zero carbon heating, low carbon heating in places without necessarily it being part of a district heating network. I think the plan for the district the plan for the district heating network that was mooted before for Church Street would have still been burning fossil fuels. So we obviously want to move away from that. I mean, there, like I say, don't want to preempt the findings of the local area energy plan, and there'll be a lot of work to discuss the findings of those with the residents, but kind of nothing's off the table, but it may just be that there are better ways of doing it.
Thanks, Matt. Are there any other questions in the room? Nisha, after you. Just wait for the microphone. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for organising this. I'd like to ask what is being done with the antisocial behaviour that is happening on Harrow Road? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Misha, you said? Nisha, sorry. Beg your pardon. So we're working in partnership with the police. We have our ASB teams and on our housing estates to try and have more of a proactive approach. So is there a particular situation or a case that you've raised already that you'd like to just add some context to?
Sure, thank you so much, Aisha. So we also have the Harrow Road Square, which a lot of people hang out. Also, there has been incidents where a guy has had a machete and ran in the high street of Harrow Road. There have been cars and there's been violence. There are also, in terms of Hashmore Road, there's been violence there, drug dealings. Just want to know, how are you protecting the residents?
So obviously, with when it's crime or drug dealing and stuff, that is a matter for the police. So in any instance, you should always call 999 because that is their responsibility. They have enforcement powers. We don't. We have. Our ASB teams are working closely with our residents on our estates all over Westminster to try and mitigate some of those problematic areas and hotspot areas that they work in partnership with the police and the integrated gangs units. And we also have a serious youth crime team as well that also work with the partners, so the other stakeholders. So again, it will be with the youth clubs, the police, and other partners within Westminster. So in particular, so when it's crime, you need to call 999 because the more you report crime, the more it's flagged up as a hotspot area, and that's where police are adding more resources.
Just very briefly to add, in terms of Maida Hill Market, which is obviously we recognise is this on? Can people hear me?
Is, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, you said about Harrow. So I take it you mean Maida Hill Market, don't you?
That is one section, but also this has been ongoing for years. So I appreciate what you're sharing and what is being done. You're saying police. We do call the police, but these situations are a continuation over years. So when we want to tidy up Westminster, how do we tidy up Westminster when these are ongoing issues?
So just to say, a number of people on this thing have a sort of monthly meeting with the police about the situation around Maida Hill Market and the bits of Harrow Road that relate to that, because we recognise that's a hotspot area, and one of the key things that we're trying to get right as part of the North Paddington programme is not only doing the physical redevelopment of the space that is, you will have seen the signs and everything about that, but is getting the sort of, supporting our communities in lots of different ways to make sure that area is a place that's more accessible and for all. So there's and tackling the sort of crime and antisocial behaviour that is there in the right way whilst providing support to people. So all I'd say is there is an active work that is being led by the Harrow Road ward councillors alongside a number of other people on here. So Aisha and I periodically go to those, and that's with Al Phillips, who's the is he an inspector?
He's an inspector.
He's an inspector, yeah. Sorry, who's the police lead for that area? And we absolutely recognise there are serious issues of antisocial behaviour on the street in and around Maida Hill Market, and obviously related issues on our estate. So we know that these are in the team, obviously working to try and improve the response of our housing ASB teams, and we're trying to make it join up together. So there's a broader, that's part of the broader picture of what we're trying to do in North Paddington. I don't know, Jeff.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I live on Elgin Avenue, so it's a key focus of mine. I appreciate if you don't live in that particular area, this conversation probably isn't too exciting for you. But for example, we have put CCTV in the square now, and that's largely driven off the drug dealers as far as we can see. So there's still ASB, but I think there's less crime. And the police say no one's currently reporting crime. But I'll go back to what Aisha was saying, and this goes for everywhere in the city. If you see a crime, please report it. I know people think the police won't do anything, and they might not, right? Because they're busy and everything. But they're driven by statistics. So the more crime reported in an area, the more effort you get, and the easier it is for us to get resources. Because quite often we say to the police, "There's a real issue here," and they say, "Look, we've had no reports of crime." So if I could ask everybody here, please report everything you see.
Thanks, Nisha. And we contacted each other before the meeting as well. I know that you had issues around Ashmore Road and ASB there as well. So we'll go to this lady down at the front, if that's all right. Sorry, and we will go to you, Angra, in a moment, I'm sure.
Right, just staying with the ASB, it's throughout Westminster. It's not just the estates. I think you guys can do more because many of the local people involved are residents of Westminster. They're probably living in Westminster property. They're getting the support from Westminster. I think you need to toughen up now, because if the area is not providing the kind of support they require, and there's no youth clubs and things to give them that kind of support, the ASB becomes even worse because they are groomed and brought into the activity. And reporting to the police, a lot of people are absolutely fed up reporting. We're tired of just collecting statistics. The problem is very serious. Some of the streets you can't walk at night. And I think you need to start targeting the accommodation and where they are staying so that there's some form of accountability. If you want to conduct yourself in this manner, I think it needs to come in a different format, and then start bringing in the police. Most of the crime is in the early hours of the morning. None of the safer neighborhood work. It's unreasonable. They've got large areas to cover. I understand that. But some of the drugs leads into ASB, and young people coming back in the evening, and that it's not pleasant. So I'm just saying they are residents. They are local, they're within the council, and you do need to install more CCTV, because by the time the police come, it's maybe several weeks later, and if there is relevant CCTV, we shouldn't be logging it, we shouldn't be recording it, and then nobody taking any notice of it. It's really serious, and it's far more serious than I think people are proactively saying, because it's the way it's reported or the data is gathered. So please, guys, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question and very important comments. We recognise and we're aware of all the issues that you've listed. We continue to work with the police. I mean, obviously, the more you report, and I know people are fed up of reporting over and over again, but the more you report, the more they see it as a red spot area, and they do deploy resources. They do have extra resources that they can deploy to those areas that you identify. But we can only do that if we report it. In terms of what happens on our estates, again, we are working with the integrated gangs unit, so they are aware of some of those residents that are problematic. But we need to be, on balance, we need to be mindful that people have vulnerabilities, they have mental health issues as well. Yes, exactly. So we're trying to support those individuals to get back on track. It's not an easy kind of solution.
Within Westminster.
I'm conscious
So that's where I'm coming from.
Yes, and I totally understand, and it happens throughout Westminster, and it's not just not just concentrated areas. Yeah. But we are working on it.
I'm going to move to the next question, but I am going to take the prerogative of just answering that point at the beginning that you made, which was really important around youth clubs and having stuff for young people to do. And we're really proud that in the first 18 months we've invested £1 million of your money, our money, in improving youth services in the city and supporting more youth clubs, and we've managed to increase the number of young people who've been able to do activities during the summer holidays and in the evening. So that's a really important part of it. I'm really glad you made that point. So can I move on to Angrit's question, if that's all right? It's this lady just here.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm trying to make my question as short as possible, but first of all, I want to explain that I have lived at the Brunel estate for 7 years, and in all these years, I was repeatedly threatened with homelessness, and when the council tried to help me to avert that, I asked to be registered on the Westminster Housing Register for social housing. And I was always told, oh, Westminster doesn't have a housing register, Westminster doesn't have council housing. The government hasn't built any new houses, there is nothing. And over the 7 years, I couldn't get there. So last month, finally, I was provided with the access details of my account on the Westminster Housing Register, and I could see their advertisements that every week 5 to 7 council flats are offered. That's quite a lot every week, but I didn't understand some of the criteria. For instance, here there was a place which says this property may be withdrawn for a direct offer. Who can get a direct offer to Westminster property? Then there was here, I found a property with a description. This is a supported property suitable for people aged 50 plus. I'm 54. This property is suitable for somebody with no significant health problems. There's a resident scheme manager and so on. I went there. I tried to bid for this property. I couldn't. For some reason, I would have been number 5 on the bidding, and should have been invited to a viewing. I went there to see this property. I was told by the estate manager, we don't know of any viewing here, and maybe you can ask the council. And so I don't know why I cannot bid for this property.
That's all right, Angela. So I think we're getting the gist of the question.
And
which
I don't
is
know what direct
the
offer.
housing list, how is it working? It doesn't appear to be working for you. What are the factors involved? Is that all right, Lisa, for you to take that question?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for your question, Angrea. So right now we are going through a allocations review and a housing and a homelessness strategy. So we have a statutory responsibility to publish our allocations policy, and we're currently reviewing it to make it more transparent and more open in how we allocate social housing, and make it a simpler scheme as well, so that it's easier for residents and stakeholders to understand and for the council to deliver. We also want to we also recognise that people have multiple needs, so we want to ensure that our allocations policy encompasses that as well, and we want to improve the way we communicate changes and expectations around the scheme. We anticipate that our allocation scheme will be implemented by spring 2024. In designing it, we will be speaking to a range of stakeholders, from care leavers, veterans and refugees, to adult social care, our faith and voluntary sector partners, and organisations like the Citizens Advice Bureau. And I'd be more than happy to get your feedback on how our allocations policy works right now. Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
No.
There are a lot of pressures on our housing stock, and the current allocations policy, I'll admit, it doesn't work. It has a lot of failings, and it's one that I've inherited from the former administration. So we're using this opportunity to update this policy, to create an allocations policy that works for more people, and I'd be more than happy to speak to you after this and speak more in detail with myself and the officers on how the allocations policy review will work, and I'm more than happy to get your engagement. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. I wonder, because housing is such an important issue, and the whole of London is in the grip of a housing crisis, is it worth any context from Lisa or Adam about it is a crisis facing the whole city, and we're trying our best, but to give any colour to that? Adam? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot there.
Yeah, but I think obviously a number of people on this panel are working to try and deal with the housing crisis. In terms of the real issues we have with increasing homelessness, there's been a small sliver of good news today in that fact the government has uprated the housing benefit, local housing allowance, to the 30th centile, which is quite technical, but basically means there'll be a bit more housing benefit, which will hopefully help more people stay in their current homes rather than becoming homeless, and gives us a little bit more flexibility when we're looking to try and find temporary accommodation for people to get more flats that are accessible. Because the problem is more and more people, because private rents have been going up and up and up, there is more pressure on the council's homelessness services. Basically, our temporary accommodation numbers are going like that, as every other local authority in London is, because people who we have a duty to house are coming to us. So the pressures on our housing system is enormous. We're trying to build more truly affordable homes. That's focusing on building council homes for social rent. We've got 300 Harrow Road opening at the end of the month. We've been able to flip that from being 50% private sale and only a small number of social housing to making that predominantly new social housing, to try and help some of the pressures that's been building up over many, many years for all the different types of need, whether that's people who are homeless, people who are overcrowded. Our case bag, all councillors, is horrendous in terms of the pressures that we have in terms of housing supply and housing need. So Lisa's talking about making the allocations policy fairer, and that's absolutely crucial, but it's also just we recognise the scale of need, both in terms of over many decades, Westminster hasn't built enough social housing, which is causing huge problems now as the pressures are more acute than they ever have been. And then in terms of the housing services, Lise has already talked about some of this already, and we've got lots of people in the room here where we recognise there are enormous pressures on housing costs and pressures at the moment, and there's a long-standing issues about how the housing system doesn't work, needs to be more transparent and more effectively working with residents. And we've got lots of good people who are working hard, but it's making sure the systems are operating more efficiently to help our residents. And we're on a journey on that. We're not going to pretend we're anywhere near the end of that journey. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, no, I think you've covered everything, Adam, but we have a housing improvement plan where we are looking at all our processes from major works, repairs, to our resident engagement. We're also looking at how we can, so we have a resident panel till the end of this year, and then we'll be going out to engage with the wider community and ensure that we have a resident panel ready for April 2024. So there's lots of ways that people can get involved in housing, and I would really like people to get involved in our resident panels and the other engagement processes that we will be talking about launching in the next few months.
Great. I think that was really important because it is such an important issue. So I'll take one final question from well, not a final question, but one question from you, Madam. I'll do a couple of online questions and then I'll come back to the floor. So this lady here at the front.
Good evening. My name is Alicia. I wonder, how do you ensure that leaseholders comply with all the lease covenants? I am asking this because I am a leaseholder and I suffer for many, many years the consequences of the lack of compliance of my neighbors upstairs on top of my flat in many of the covenants, but especially the antisocial behavior, the excessiveness. I'm not going to enter into details, otherwise we will hear all the evening. The complaint has been placed already to one of your housing officers, who very kindly, and in the past, not under this government, but in the past, equally inefficient results. And I just wonder, based on my experience that I have worked in 6 London boroughs as an occupational therapist, I was unable to close any cases unless I prove in supervision that the case has been satisfactorily completed, or that no further action was possible. But we are always with answer to those clients. So in my case, several times in previous governments, they just closed the case without any further explanation. In this last complaint, I have an officer that has been very friendly, very supportive, but unfortunately, the complaint has not been solved. Apparently, one of your officers in housing is looking into my complaint, which I listed in detail of what the problems are with my neighbors on the top floor, and to check that what I'm saying is true, that they are breaching most of the covenants of the lease. And I have suffered the consequence in such a way that sometimes I feel that my health, well, my physical health has been affected, my blood pressure and so on. And just because I'm a therapist, I have been able to bear the mental pressure. I don't want to appear a victim, but I will plead you that, and I'm sure it's not only me, because I cannot believe that in the hundreds or thousands of residents in the borough, I will be the only one that is having this problem. So I will appreciate if something is done to continue and complete my complaint. Thank you.
I'm really sorry to hear about your situation. We are looking at our complaints processes, but what would be really good is if I got you in contact with our officers so they can look at your particular case. Yeah?
No, but I think the offer here from the cabinet member is that you speak to the most senior officers and they will feed back to the cabinet member who will make sure that something's done on your behalf, madam. So perhaps afterwards, yeah. Lisa, we'll get your details. Is that all right, madam? No, not at all. So we've got 2 online questions. We've got one for Councillor Boothroyd here from Christine Stitch. It begins, I am extremely disappointed to hear that you're planning to build a block of flats on the Sussex Street Pimlico play area instead of transforming it into a small but much needed open garden space for everyone in the area to enjoy. A recent petition proved that the majority of people in Pimlico favour having a small open green space. Why have you ignored the views of us who will be most affected by this? David.
Yes, well, thank you for the question. This is about 3 to 13 Sussex Street, which was a bomb site, and it was left for a quarter of a century. And then in 1970, there was a major local campaign to open a play area for local children, and that was successful, and it was very popular. You had to pay for your children to go there, but it had a lot of people going, and then it petered out. There were many fewer people, and a previous council administration decided to close it in 2015, and since then it's been let out to private schools in Belgravia. So it's never actually been public open space. And I've listened to the 105 people who signed the petition, and I've also listened to the 4,000 families who are on the waiting list for housing. And I think we can do something that will meet both of their needs, that we can have some public open space and housing on this site. They're working on plans at the moment. When we have the plans ready, we will be going out for full consultation with local residents and with the community, including community groups like the Pimlico Neighbourhood Forum.
Thanks, David. And then another online question to you, Paul, Councillor de Oldenburg, which is, when are we controlling the breaking of the 20-mile-per-hour speed limits?
Right. We are working very closely with the police on that, because we have the power to put the 20-mile-an-hour roundels on the street and on the roadway. And by and large, they are being adhered to. But of course, there are some that aren't. And interestingly, one of the drivers who wasn't recently was the Archbishop of Canterbury, who got, you might have read about it, he got fined for travelling at 25 miles an hour on a 20-mile-an-hour zone. But I suppose that's compared to some of the drivers who go fast on roads, that's probably a minor infringement. But we are working with the police closely on that. And in areas where we have particular problems, we put those vehicle-activated signs that you might see. So they're an aid to drivers where it flashes up. If you're going more than 20, it says you're going 25 or 30 or whatever. So it brings to the attention of the driver that they're going too fast. So we've got those all over Westminster, and we can respond to people's concerns in any streets if it's appropriate by putting them up there as well. So if you think there are any streets where these would be of benefit, please let us know. We'll get the road safety team to investigate to see if it would help slow down the traffic.
Great, thank you. So I wonder if there are any further questions. I can see a lady with her hand up at the back just there. Just a second, the microphone will just be with you. There it is.
We got a sign on our street and 20 miles an hour, but the drivers are not taking notice of because it goes straight down to the motorway. And as soon as they turn from Porchester Road, there they go, speed like hell. And I've got 96 women who like to go out for a walk, and they are terrified. So do you think that we could put something there that would stop the drivers behaving the way they are?
Well, thank you for pointing that location out. I think that one is a particular hotspot because of it leads to the Westway where people put their foot down. I think this is probably something where we should get the traffic police to locate some cameras and make sure that those that do put their foot down before they get on the Westway are delivered a suitable penalty charge notice.
We would appreciate it.
Points on their licence, so we can alert the police to this location.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Paul. There was another question. Oh, there we are. The lady here.
Hi everyone, my name is Michaela Best and I'm a resident in the Harrow Road ward. So I've got a well done for you and I've also got a question. So I'm an advocate for citizens' assemblies, so I'm really delighted that you've held our first citizens' assembly at Westminster City Council and really on the important topic of achieving net zero in the fairest way for us all, so well done. I'm sure you don't get many well done's. We were one of many hundreds of families who were flooded in Maida Vale in July 21, and as a consequence, I have become a bit of a climate activist. So I've noticed with some disappointment that Westminster hasn't yet signed up to the Climate and Ecology Bill that's trying to make its way through Parliament. You're one of 300 still not signed up, as I understand it. So my question is, I'm sure it's an oversight, but could you please sign up?
So that's me. I'm really happy to say that we have signed up. We're on the website. So if you check on the list of ones that have signed up, and we signed up. We didn't sign up because we thought you were going to ask this question. We signed up. We signed up a little while ago. It was actually just in the council, we had a motion to declare an ecological emergency back in September. And so that was part of that. But yes, we are really pleased that we had the Citizens' Assembly. I think it's fair to say we don't get that many well dones, but we have had several about having an assembly on the climate emergency. So it's really good to hear from you on that point. While I've got the floor, I just say that just to explain to people who don't know what the Climate and Ecology Bill is, it probably offers us the best chance that we've got and if people sign up to it and if people act on it, it gives us a pretty decent chance of limiting global heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So as part of the ecological emergency that we declared, we also said that we would undertake a green infrastructure audit, and that's on track at the moment, should be delivered by the end of December. And so we have 33 sites of importance for nature conservation, which have been surveyed, and that'll give us it'll help us to identify the best opportunities for ecological improvements, and we already have a number of projects underway, such as Greening Westminster, which has been there. We've dished out quite a bit of money, and then as part of things that Paul de Moldenberg's doing, we've had No Mo May a couple of times, and just kind of trying to do work with the council's open spaces to ensure that we're really thinking about the ecological emergency and decisions that are taken on the management of those places.
Okay, thank you. 0 Hour need to update their website, I think.
I checked, and we are named, but we are. I did check, and I promise we're on there.
Listed as City of Westminster or Westminster City? I'm just trying to think.
No, it's Westminster. It begins with W, not C.
Brilliant. Now, I'll just say it's it's past 5 today. We're coming up to 8 o'clock. The leader has told the Cabinet that we're staying till 8:30. But I do...
We have to be out of the building at 8:30. But
right. So we will be staying longer to get through more questions. But, of course, if people need to leave, please do free to leave if you need to. Otherwise, we are going to plough on. I'll take a few more from the floor and then go back to online. So I'll go to this lady first.
Thank you for having this meeting. I'm just picking this up based on fellow resident regarding serious youth violence. Tim, this topic is actually to you. I did email your councillor email address back in summer to let you know that I received funding as a Westminster Initiative pilot project called Stay Safe, Stay Creative to train residents with free knife wound first aid training. And I wanted to collaborate with you to see how we can get not just young people, but actual residents and business owners within the Harrow Road, Queen's Park and Westbourne ward trained up. And my deadline is March to get at least 100 residents trained up, and I would like your assistance with that. So if you could kindly reply to my email.
I will do, and there's a mea culpa on me, apologies for not replying to email. So can I get your details afterwards? That's really, really important.
Okay. And if anybody here wants to sign up, I can also provide further details.
Could I also, if you copy me into the email, because it might be something that through public health we can help out on.
Thank you.
Great. So some more from the floor. I'll take two people at the same time, if you see what I mean. So who's got their hands up? So a lady there and a lady there, and we'll start with the lady just at the back first.
Hi, my name is Paige Ames, and I have been a resident for 21 years. Don't let the accent fool you. I'm curious about public toilets. So at the risk of talking about nice things, because I walk in Kensington Gardens, and 2 of those public toilets have been closed since 2020. And if you're a person older than 35 or a person younger than 4, you don't feel like walking 10 more minutes if you need to go to the loo. So I'm just curious if there's any, and it's not just those public toilets that have been closed. So recently there was an article in the paper about it, but I'm just curious if this is on your radar. You're committed to public toilets, not only for the residents, but for our tourists that bring in so much money into this into the city. So thank you.
Yes, public toilets is in my area. We are committed to public toilets, and we are going to be investing something like £6 million in refurbishing the existing ones, particularly in places like Piccadilly Circus, Whitehall, but also in Soho, and all those areas where there's lots of people, where there be residents, visitors, people working here. And we're going to bring them up to a really high standard. They haven't been invested in for many, many years, and we need to get those very well-used toilets up into use. As you may know, we're doing a lot of work along Oxford Street, or going to be completely renewing Oxford Street, and as part of that programme, we're looking at sites for public toilets, because that's a very, very busy area. Again, it's visitors, it's residents, it's people who work there. We're also looking into the possibility of starting what's called community toilets initiatives, which are things that are happening all over the country. If you think about it, we have lots of restaurants, cafes, bars, pubs, hotels, all sorts of places where the public go and they have toilets. And the idea is to try and work with those private establishments so they put up stickers in their windows saying, "You're welcome to use our toilet." It happens all over the country, and the businesses get benefits because the people who are going into the shops or the cafes may well then stay and have a cup of tea or buy something. So it's something that we hope it can complement the public provision of toilets, so that more toilets that are already there are accessible to people who are in the vicinity and are caught short. Well, they are owned by the Royal Parks manage those areas. Hyde Park, Kensington Gardens. The previous council closed those toilets, I think, in 2020 or maybe a bit before that. So this is something this happened before we took over. The Royal Parks do have a number of toilets within them, so they are committed to keeping those. But some of those toilets were extremely old and antiquated and require lots of money to be spent on them. We're putting our money in upgrading our antiquated toilets, but we can't dictate what the Royal Parks do with their assets.
And just to add a couple of things, because it's a really important issue. We get, quite rightly, more questions about toilets than possibly anything else apart from maybe housing. But it's a clear issue, and it comes back in all feedback that we get. They need to be accessible. So I'm very pleased at Maida Hill there's an underground toilet which we're going to be closing and replacing with an above ground toilet block which anybody's going to be able to access, because going down those stairs is quite a challenge. And we're changing the planning guidance, so all new large retail or leisure developments will have to have publicly accessible toilets within them. Now, that'll take years to make a big impact because it's only new developments that are going to be impacted. But I think it's an example of where we can use the process in order to get more public toilets because they're clearly so badly needed.
Brilliant. So I am going to go to some from the list because I know people have made an effort, and then I will come back to the floor. So we've got one from Simon Walton. Is Simon Walton here? There you are. So do you want me to read it out on your behalf? Yeah. So the question is to you, Paul. It's there will soon be more grass growing in the streets of Queen's Park than in the gardens. Why has the standard slipped?
I wondered who asked this question, and I should have realised it would be you, Simon. Thank you for your question. Well, you probably remember we had the warmest June on record, which was followed by an exceptionally wet July. And this created, if you like, the forests that you've observed at the time. One of the things we have done is to stop using harmful or toxic chemicals, which a lot of local authorities use to keep the weeds down. We think this is wrong because these toxic weed killers contaminate water sources and can also damage other plants in the area. So we've stopped doing that. But all our street sweepers are issued with hose, and they're trained how to get rid of weeds without spoiling the pavement area. We're on that. The street sweepers know what they have to do, and they do it. Sometimes there's more rubbish to be collected, so they concentrate on sweeping the cigarette ends and the cups and the cans and bottles from the street. But you can be sure that we're on this, and it's one of the things that our street sweepers are mandated to do. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Is Suzanne Steer here? No. Well, I've got a question from Suzanne, and I think it's either to Aisha or to Paul. What is being done about the cyclists who go on pavements, go through traffic lights and the wrong way up one-way streets? This is making walking on pavements stressful, and some are motorised and don't have lights at night. Lawlessness in general has increased. Cycles are left on pavements with no regard for those in wheelchairs, the blind, or those with prams.
Yep, that's me. Yes, well, again, I'm going to have to start by saying dealing with people who break the law by cycling on the pavement is a police matter. Our city inspectors or anybody else working for the council doesn't have the power to apprehend anybody doing that. So it's something which the police have to do. I think, like you, they see this as a very, very, very low-level crime. So they don't do it often unless it's right in front of their eyes. One of the things that we're doing are following. We have a very good cycle training scheme where we cycle trainers try and instill on young people and anybody starting to cycle the good behaviours, not only in terms of safety, but where you should cycle and where you shouldn't. So we have this cycle training scheme. I think hundreds of people a year go through it, and we hope to continue it, if not expand it, over the years. We're also improving our cycle infrastructure so there are more safe places for cyclists to travel. A lot of cyclists who do occasionally go on the pavement say the reason we do it because it's not safe on the road. And so in order to try and persuade them that it is safer, we're introducing more cycle lanes and secure, safe places for cyclists to travel on the road. We're also helping cyclists generally, making it safer for them to store their bikes, so we're installing more cycle hangers and cycle stands so that people are encouraged to have a cycle and to store it safely. And finally, we've got a completely new thing which has taken the whole of London in particular Westminster by storm, which are these e-hire bikes. There are at least 3,000 on the streets of Westminster on a regular day, and trying to manage those cycles without any government legislation is a real challenge to us. So we've introduced a new e-bike parking network. We've got nearly 350 bays right across Westminster. We're in discussions and talking to the 3 e-bike operators. One's called Lime, one's called Tia, and one's called Forest, and you'll have all seen their bikes all over Westminster, everywhere. What I think we've been able to achieve so far is that since we introduced the e-bike network for parking, there are fewer bikes actually blocking and obstructing the road, the pavement now. A lot fewer than that. We get much fewer complaints about that. What that's happened, though, is that we've got about a dozen hotspots in the very popular parts of Westminster, like Soho, like Covent Garden, where there are lots and lots and lots of bikes parked, particularly at the weekend, which can cause obstructions. So we're trying to work with the operators to address these hotspots so that the bikes are distributed more evenly across the city, so that you can see, groups of 6, 8, maybe 10 bikes rather than groups of 20 or 30 or more bikes. It's a challenge. We're not there yet, but we're going to work very closely with all the operators to make it happen and to resolve the problems.
And just to pick up, I heard obviously some dissent from the floor, and I think the fundamental point is that it's been a phased rollout, as Paul said, to get the numbers. So it's only very recently, in the last week or two, actually rolled out to areas like this. Right. So that's it. The focus was initially in the centre of town, where there was the highest number of bikes, but obviously, practice and it has been rolled out here, and behaviours are changing over time. And again, we need government legislation to give TfL the powers to regulate the system, and us enforcement powers to remove bikes that are taken away. Without that, we are reliant on these individually negotiated deals that Paul's been spending an awful lot of time trying to do. So we hope this will make a difference, but we do need those powers in order to actually really get on top of the problem long term.
Great, we're in the final straight. I do want to get through some more quite quickly, so if Cabinet members can keep their answers relatively short as well. So there's a question from Patience, and I think this is for you, Lisa, or potentially for Matt, and Patience is here, I think. The question is, I've attended all previous events, yet no one has been able to help me, a widowed pensioner, just because I own my own property and unfortunately cannot afford to sort out issues with dampness.
That's for me. Is Patience here?
I think Patience is here.
Hi, Patience. Thank you very much for your question. We know that damp and mould have been a problem for all our residents. Poor insulation, bad ventilation and substandard plumbing have led to a problem across London and the rest of the UK. We welcome our responsibility to uphold Awab's law, named after Awab Ishaq, who tragically died in Rochdale. One of the first things I did as the Cabinet Member for Housing Services was set up a dedicated damp and mould team for our tenants and our leaseholders. So we have an online survey where you can report damp and mould in your property. But we do have our officers here today, so they can take your contact details. And I'm sorry that you haven't received any support before, but we'll definitely take your contact details and support you.
Great. So is that all right, Patience? Afterwards, we'll make sure officers speak to you and ensure that you're getting the support that you need to deal with that issue. So there are two hands. Well, there's a lady there who's been waiting very patiently on the left-hand side, and then after that, we'll go to this lady here.
Thanks. Is it on? Good luck with the bikes, by the way. I'm just going to go back to Oxford Street and your extensive works. Will buses still have access?
Buses, yes. We're not going to change any bus routes. Traffic will still flow down Oxford Street, but
Great.
The pavements will be a bit wider. But we're not
because for older people and disabled people,
well,
it's
absolutely.
essential.
I mean, one of the reasons why we're not pedestrianising Oxford Street is because of the buses. No one knows where the buses would go. How would you get to Oxford Street if there's no buses? How would you get from one end to the other? It's a mile long. with 2 bags of shopping and 3 small children if you haven't got a bus. So yeah, absolutely, buses are going to stay.
Thanks. And then I think it was this lady here.
Yes, my name is Rose Hales, and I live in Westminster since the 70s. What I came here today to ask is about the buses, which you get the answer, the toilet. Now I want to know, what about the seats that usually are around? A lot of us cannot walk very much. And if we go in and do our little shopping, we want to have a seat. Some of the bench them is taken away. And I would like to know why. Okay. Another thing, since I live in Westminster since the 70s, I see a lot of changes. I see a lot of houses being built. But I make a point to go around and ask a lot of people, do you know who or anyone get one of those houses? No. And there's nobody can say to me, I know somebody that get one of those houses. So do you know anybody who is getting all those houses? Because I need one. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for the question. So we'll go to benches and then we will go back to housing. It's what we said earlier. It is the crisis facing all, not just Westminster, but the whole city. So benches seems like the easier part of the question potentially, Paul.
Yes, benches is something that we're looking at. We're just updating our public realm guidelines, which is how you improve the environment for people who are walking and travelling around Westminster. And as you pointed out, not everybody can walk long distances, and they need somewhere to sit and rest before they continue their journey. So we're always looking at opportunities. We've got a programme of public realm schemes right across Westminster, and we always try and include seating whenever possible in those new schemes. So I'd be interested to know, you said that a bench disappeared. I think I've got that correct. Where was this bench located?
Westbourne Park Road, St Stephen Garden. Yeah.
Right. I'll have to investigate as to why that was taken away, and we'll see if we can reinstate it. I can't give any promises, but if we can find out why it was taken away, maybe we can either relocate it or reinstate it.
Well, maybe we can take the lady's contact details afterwards, just so that we can, And so housing, Adam, are you okay?
And I'll give a brief overview. I mean, I think the fundamental problem is that for decades, all that was, the vast majority of what was being built here was private homes for sale. Private homes for sale for people who weren't necessarily going to live in those properties. It may be part of a property portfolio from around the world. So we have a structural problem that a lot of the housing that got built here wasn't aimed at local people, and previous councils weren't insisting that those developers built the affordable housing that they should have done as part of their policies. We are working to try and change that. We are, through the work that Jeff is doing, to try and make developers who are future developments make sure that there is more affordable housing that's delivered as part of those schemes. And the work that Matt is doing on behalf of the council is making sure that when Westminster builds things, such as 300 Harrow Road, which is just about to open now, that far more of those homes are made available to local people, either as council homes for social rent or intermediate homes. So there's a lot of work that we are doing. We can't undo the past, but we can try and make sure that the future housing that gets built in Westminster is made available for more people. So we're building 1,000 new council homes for social rent by 2026 through a range of different schemes, which will help with our housing waiting list. But it is a small. Even that, what sounds like a large number, is a small step in trying to tackle the overall level of housing need. So really, obviously, interested to pick up your specific case, but we know there haven't been enough council homes being built. There haven't been enough affordable housing being built by developers in the past, and we want to make sure that in future we can't undo the past, but making sure that in future the developers pay their fair share and we maximise the use of Westminster's own land to build.
Lies, because when they ready to make the houses, they said there is so much for social housing. And when the house is finished, there's nobody in social housing moving there.
I think the reality is that in a lot of schemes that got passed previously through the planning system, the council didn't enforce particularly well the amount of affordable housing that should have been built as part of those schemes. I remember schemes that got waved through with only like 4% contribution to affordable housing. So the Whiteley's development, for example, shockingly poor levels of affordable housing. Now, some of that's set out in some of that is about their lawyers having a go at the council, but we think the council should have been more robust in enforcing its own policies, and we think the council should also strengthen its policies to maximise stuff in the future. The challenge we now have is that no one is building houses anywhere in London because there was a large glut of homes that were built through those policies that were there before. So we're trying to get our policies in the right shape for when developers do decide they want to build houses again, so that they can pay their fair share. But that's why our land becomes ever more important in terms of what we're building to try and to do our bit to help. So I don't know. Are you currently on Westminster's housing waiting list or? Yeah, so. Oh, right. Well, I'm afraid there is a bit of a wait on that, but even with what we're building. So.
Good. Now, I am going to wrap it up, as I'm told that we actually have to be out of the building altogether at past. So, if it's going to be super quick, madam, but this will be the very last question of the evening. Okay, so the question is.
From the area.
The question is, where are your local police officers? Now, I'll let Aisha answer, but I remember at the very beginning, Aisha said that we're not responsible for the police service.
Whereabouts do you live, madam? Bayswater. So you do have a dedicated team of officers. I believe you have 3 around the Bayswater, sort of Lancaster Gate. They do have regular safer neighbourhood team meetings. I'll take your details at the end, and then I can email you their details. But you definitely do have a safer neighbourhood team. Sorry? Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, you do have a team. I can't comment on their shift patterns, but I will definitely give you their contact details. And then maybe you could join the Safer Neighbourhood team as well. And they meet every quarter. And they're very active. They do patrol the area, but like I said, I can't comment on their shift patterns because I don't have them. But they are around.
And Aisha, it's another area where unfortunately the Metropolitan Police have been defunded by central government, over £1 billion taken out of their budget over the last 10 years. Look, everybody, we've rattled to the end. Thank you so much for being patient with us. If your question wasn't asked, we will get an answer to you. If you've got a question that you were going to say here, stay behind and we'll take your details and we'll get a question to you. Thank you to the Cabinet and thank you to all of you.